So for our next topic, I would request Dr. Pratik Das and Dr. Suresh Ramasubban as a chairperson. I would request Dr. Sanjay Pandya. The topic is the art and the science of using IV fluid in clinical practice.
Respected chairpersons and all organizers. It's indeed a great pleasure to be here, and talking to this august audience is truly a pleasure. Now, fluid therapy is something which is very important. Why? Because as Dr. Subhash Todi sir mentioned, it's a double-edged sword, and fluid overload can be harmful, and so is the inadequate fluid administration. Fluid administration is the topic which is very vital because it's the most common intervention in emergency medicine. If you look at the recent literature, some 80 to 90% of the hospitalized sick patient needs some kind of the fluid administration. Error is common. If you look at the data from UK, I'm not talking about India, some 20% of the patient receiving IV fluid suffer complication due to inappropriate fluid administration. Further data, if you see, the basic information about IV fluid is inadequate because only 48% of trainees knows that how much sodium RL contains. 45% don't know that how much sodium does 1 liter of normal saline contains. So if this is the state of awareness regarding IV fluid in UK, it's going to be common everywhere. For student, it's going to be a very confusing topic, and for clinician to prepare IV fluid prescription is going to be nightmare. So today I am going to discuss that how do we plan the prescription in such a way that we prepare a prescription which is proper, optimum, and is helpful to the patient. So we need to know when to give, what to give, how much to give, and what not to give. I will be discussing some basics of IV fluid, maintenance fluid, fluid therapy in some clinical disorders, and fluid resuscitation as a part of today's discussion. Now, when we want to provide IV fluid, at least as we noted in UK studies that how content of IV fluid may not be known to many, I would like to start with some of the basic things which will make us clear why we select one fluid over the other. Sodium content is the most important content, and therefore we need to know that which fluids are rich and which fluids are poor in sodium. When we want to give IV fluid with more sodium concentration, saline, DNS, RL are the most widely used fluid. Rest all isolites, half normal saline, are comparatively lower in sodium concentration. We always talk about gram when it comes to administering sodium, but when it comes to sodium content of IV fluid, it is always in milliequivalent, and therefore we need to know that how much sodium in terms of gram as well as milliequivalent exist in IV fluid. So DNS and NS has 154 milliequivalent, which is 9 gram. Half normal saline is 77 milliequivalent, which is 4.5 gram. 3% NaCl is 51 milliequivalent, which is a 3 gram. So this basic information helps you to select one fluid over the other considering its sodium content. Likewise, we need to know that amongst commercially available IV fluid, which fluid has how much potassium. If we look at the potassium content, hardly any fluid which we use in day-to-day practice like normal saline or 5% RL has potassium in it. Because RL has just 4 milliequivalent, and the rest of the potassium containing fluid are not really used in day-to-day practice. And therefore, if we want to provide potassium to patient, it is important that we have to add either in oral form or we use KCl, where 1 ampule contains 20 milliequivalent of potassium. So this is something which is very important because hypokalemia may be associated with multiple problems, and therefore knowing potassium content is something which is very vital. When we select IV fluid, it's not only what IV fluid contains. Equally important that what IV fluid does not contain. So when we don't want to provide dextrose containing fluid, we use saline, RL, plasma light. When we don't want to provide sodium, then all dextrose containing fluids are sodium free fluids, and isolites are low sodium containing fluid. Likewise, when we don't want to provide potassium, we use saline, DNase and all dextrose containing fluid. So with this basic understanding, at least we should also know that amongst different IV fluids available, how do we select one over the other? 5% dextrose is just a water with 50 gram per liter of dextrose in the same, which provides 170 kilocalories per liter energy. So it provides free water, no electrolytes, hypotonic fluid, and dextrose is in small amount. And therefore, it's less useful in day-to-day practice, especially in ICU. This fluid is harmful and is usually avoided. However, its use is limited as a vehicle for some of the IV drugs in some of the patients with hypernatremia who is hemodynamically stable, if patient is NBM for the prevention of the ketosis, and if pre-op duration is long, if we want to avoid dehydration, then just we provide this kind of the fluid. However, because of its hypotonic nature, we should avoid it in cerebral edema, head injury, post-neurosurgical patient, post-URP patient. And because it does not contain sodium in shock and hyponatremia, it should not be used. Normal saline is most widely used fluid in day-to-day practice. It is rich source of the sodium. Amongst routinely used IV fluid, it is the richest source of the sodium, 154 milliequivalent per liter, or we can say 9 gram per liter is the sodium content. Its use is in vomiting, hypochloremia, hypovolemic shock, metabolic alkalosis, traumatic brain injury, hypercalcemia. These are some of the common causes where we widely use normal saline. However, because of its rich content, we should use it cautiously in patient with anasarca or patient with severe uncontrolled hypertension. Ringus lactate, balanced fluid, also known as the most physiological fluid, because if you look at the composition, sodium, potassium, chloride, lactate which gets converted into bicarbonate, everything matches. It is closer to that of the plasma, and therefore it's the physiological fluid. The lactate which gets converted into bicarbonate acts as a buffer and is beneficial, contains calcium, but lacks calories, magnesium, and very importantly, even glucose. So, because of this balanced composition, when large volume of the fluid is required, this RL can be used without the risk of electrolyte imbalance. And for this reason, for rapid and large volume fluid administration, RL is preferred fluid. With its high sodium content, it effectively expands intravascular volume, corrects hypotension, and providing bicarbonate also corrects metabolic acidosis, which is commonly present in patients with hypovolemia shock. The use of RL is commonly done for resuscitation, replacement of the surgical fluid in diarrhea, burns, fractures, diabetic ketoacidosis, irrigation of body fluids, and others. Like normal saline, sodium-rich fluid, and therefore in anasarca, in uncontrolled severe hypertension, it should be used cautiously. Isolite G is a gastric loss replacement. However, it's used sparingly. When this fluid is used, beauty is that it has a sodium, it has a chloride, it has a potassium, and ammonia gets converted into HIN. And amongst commercially available IV fluid, Isolite G is the only fluid which provides HIN. And therefore, this fluid is used when patient has vomiting, or because it provides HIN, the only fluid which directly corrects metabolic alkalosis. However, the conversion occurs in liver, and therefore, if patient has severe liver failure, Isolite G should not be used because accumulation of the unconverted ammonia may precipitate or carries the risk of encephalopathy. 17 milliequivalent high potassium. So if patient has vomiting with oliguria, shock, it can lead to hyperkalemia. And if vomiting is associated with diarrhea, we don't know what is predominant, and therefore when there is combined vomiting and diarrhea, we shouldn't use this fluid. Isolite M, beautiful maintenance fluid, and sodium 140, chloride 36, potassium 35, it has acetate, provides dextrose, and therefore this is richest source of potassium, number one. Number two, sodium is just 40 milliequivalent, and therefore it should be used cautiously when you want to provide sodium. Amongst commercially available fluid, this is the only fluid which provides phosphorus. And therefore, if your patient is not recovering from, weaning from the ventilator because of the hypophosphatemia, and you want to provide phosphorus, then the right source could be Isolite M. Also provides bicarbonate, provides calories, and therefore it's a very good maintenance fluid. So its day-to-day use is in case of the correction of the hypokalemia and ideal maintenance fluid for the adults. However, because of the low sodium content in hyponatremia, hypotension, shock, one shouldn't use it. Because 35 milliequivalent, highest potassium concentration in severe shock, oliguria, renal failure, and hyperkalemia, we will not use Isolite M, or we should use it very cautiously. So Isolite M has 35 milliequivalent per liter of potassium. In contrast to the same, 1 ampule of KCl, 10 ml, contains 20 milliequivalent. And therefore, if we want to provide potassium closer to that of Isolite M, in 1 liter of the fluid, we have to add 2 ampule of KCl. Now, last thing, that if we want to administer IV fluid, then how do we calculate? Because every patient cannot have infusion pump, and we usually need to use routine IV fluid, routine IV set to administer IV fluid. So, in day-to-day practice, how to calculate volume to drop rate when we want to deliver it either for a day or within a couple of hours? There are very simple formula. Rule of 10 for routine IV set when we want to calculate for 24 hours. So what is this rule of 10? Rule of 10 is fluid in liter to be delivered multiplied by 10 is equal to drop rate per minute. If you want to give 1 liter, 10 drops. If you want to give 3 liters, keep 30 drops. Suppose if I want to give 2.5 liters, I will keep 25 drops. The beauty of rule of 10 is that before even you take out mobile and open calculator, this formula will calculate the rate of delivery. I want to give 1.5 liter over 24 hours. So sister, please keep 15 drops. So this is what is the beauty of this rule of 10. Now, when we want to calculate for 1 hour, because all patient may not require such a 24 hours delivery. And for them, it's more simpler, it's rule of 4. Rule of 4 is what? Suppose if you want to give 100 ml divided by 4, that means 25 drops per minute. If you want to give 200 ml divided by 4, that means 50 ml, 50 drops per minute. So this is something which is very simple. In some of the patient where you want to critically administer fluid by micro drip IV set, because you may not have infusion pumps and others. At that time, it is simplest of all, because you don't need to calculate. Volume in ml per hour is equal to micro drops per minute. So this is how in day-to-day practice you can instruct your staff to calculate and provide fluid delivery effectively without availability of the gadgets. Now, when we talk about administering IV fluid, the commonest indication are fluid resuscitation, replacement fluid for various disorders, and then maintenance fluid. So we will start with the maintenance fluid. In maintenance fluid, suppose patient, only provide maintenance fluid if oral is not possible or is inadequate. So how much volume, sodium, potassium, dextrose, and which fluid should we use? As per the NICE guideline, they say that 20 to 30 ml per kg per day of the fluid is something which is optimum. The sodium content should be 1 milliequivalent, sodium and potassium content should be 1 milliequivalent per kg per day. Some of the newer articles also says that the sodium content should be little greater than what is recommended in NICE guideline. Very importantly, many a times in our patient, if patient is unable to take orally, we fail to provide adequate amount of calories. And as Dr. Subhash Todi sir has conveyed, adequate nutrition in such catabolic patient is something which is vital, and therefore NICE guidelines recommend that 1 to 1.5 gram per kg per day or minimum 100 gram of dextrose should be given to such patient as a calorie supplementation to restrict tissue catabolism. Now the question arises that for such purpose, which IV fluid will you select? Answer is that if you look at the composition recommended by NICE guideline, Isolite M matches with everything. But cost is substantially higher, and in many of the hospitals, this fluid may not be available. If you look at the up-to-date guidelines, in up-to-date they say that half normal saline with dextrose is something which is really very effective, and add potassium considering whatever may be the requirement, urine output and potassium status. Even if half normal saline is not available, then what could be the option for us? The simple option is that for every 2 bags of 5%, provide 1 bag of normal saline and add potassium as per the requirement, usually adding 20 milliequivalent in 1 liter if normal renal status, good urine output is adequate. So this is how we plan maintenance IV fluid for the adults. Now, it's beyond the scope to discuss fluid administration in each and every content, but I will discuss some of them subsequently. But before I go to this discussion, I would like to let you know about the educational activity for our kidney patient. A mission to prevent and cure kidney disease is our kidneyeducation.com website, which is available in 40 languages. This is a proud of India. This is the website which will be useful to all of us. It's globally used because it's available in 28 international languages and 12 Indian languages, including even Bangla language. Dr. Pari sir had helped us to prepare kidney book in Bengali language, and this book is available for free from this website. Very popular website, received more than 10 crore hits. From this WhatsApp number, you can get free in all 40 languages kidney book without asking any details of the use. We are the strong team because President International Society of Nephrology prepared Italian version, President International Federation of Kidney Foundation prepared Spanish version, and we are the team of 100+ nephrologists who prepared this kidney book for patient and has kept on fluid kidneyeducation.com website for free access. We are blessed. Now, when we want to talk about fluid administration in some of the common problems, I would like to talk about fluid administration in vomiting first. What is the important content of upper GI loss? Answer is that it contains water, HCl, and there is potassium loss. So, patient with vomiting will have hypokalemia, hypochloremia, and metabolic alkalosis because HIN is lost. Now, why hypokalemia occurs due to upper GI loss? Is it because of the potassium content of gastric juice? No. When there is upper GI loss, there will be hypovolemia. It will stimulate RAS system. It will increase aldosterone, and aldosterone will retain sodium and will excrete potassium in the urine, and therefore it is the urinary loss of potassium which causes hypokalemia in upper GI loss, and the potassium concentration of gastric juice is just hardly 5 to 15 milliequivalent per liter. Now, if we have a patient with vomiting who needs administration of IV fluid, then which fluid will you use for the same? Answer is that normal saline is the preferred fluid. In very few patients, even you have option to provide isolate G, but avoid it in jaundice, renal failure, shock, and oliguria. Now, why normal saline is the preferred fluid? Because when adequate volume of normal saline is given, it will lead to volume correction, increase renal perfusion, will excrete bicarbonate, and correct metabolic alkalosis. The hypochloremia, because sodium chloride contains 154 milliequivalent of sodium, 154 milliequivalent of even chloride. And therefore, it will also correct hypochloremia. And moreover, by providing adequate volume and adequate sodium, the urinary aldosterone level will get suppressed, and therefore, the urinary loss of potassium will be further prevented, and therefore, it will correct all abnormality, but will just prevent hypokalemia. And therefore, important to remember that in patient with vomiting, we need to provide potassium to such patient, either in terms of fruit juices, or if severe, we may have to add KCl to the pint. Now, if patient needs gastric irrigation, important to remember that cold, clear water is something which should not be used because it is hypotonic, will lead to imbalance of the electrolytes, will shift electrolyte from gastric juice to water which is instilled in stomach, and when it's removed, it can lead to further deterioration because of the removal of the electrolytes, which can be harmful. And therefore, either you use cold saline, or we may use cold water with salt added in the same. Now, diarrheal fluid, two important characteristics. Number one, it is rich in bicarbonate, and therefore it will lead to metabolic acidosis. And second thing, that it is rich in potassium, and therefore it will lead to hypokalemia. So hypokalemia and metabolic acidosis is the key abnormality which we find in patient with diarrhea. Now, when patient has diarrheal problem, we need to correct hypovolemia, hypokalemia, and metabolic acidosis. As such, all of us uses ORS as a first-line therapy. But when it comes to administering IV fluid in patient with diarrhea, what should be the preferred IV fluid? Answer is that it's the Ringer's lactate. RL is the first-line therapy. But when we want to provide IV fluid, RL should be preferred fluid because it provides adequate sodium, lactate gets converted into bicarbonate and therefore corrects acidosis, and it has also small amount of potassium in the same. We don't use normal saline because it lacks potassium, lacks buffer, and when large volume is given, it may aggravate, it may lead to hyperchloremic metabolic acidosis and may aggravate acidosis, and therefore, please avoid normal saline in diarrhea and select RL for the same. So when there is vomiting, normal saline is preferred. When there is diarrhea, we prefer Ringer's lactate. And in both the patient, we need to provide even potassium. Now, the concept regarding diabetic ketoacidosis is something which needs refreshment. So, suppose patient presents to us with uncontrolled diabetes, with potassium 3.7, hypotension, and bicarb of 12. How do we start the therapy? Should we start with insulin first, or should we give IV fluid or potassium? Answer is that we start with the IV fluid. Whatever may be the blood sugar, our first step of management is to start with correction of the hypovolemia. I am happy to see that large number of physicians present here practices diabetes, and therefore they know very well about this, but I will just try to refresh it. Now, the question arises that amongst fluid, what is preferred? Answer is that crystalloid is preferred and colloid has no place in its management. Now, which crystalloids are preferred to correct abnormality in diabetic ketoacidosis? Standard textbook clearly said that sodium-rich normal saline is the initial fluid of choice. But if you look at the current literature, which appeared after 2020, the balanced fluid are getting preference over the normal saline. Now, why saline popularity is getting down? Answer is that large volume of chloride-rich normal saline, because diabetic ketoacidosis needs large volume of fluid. And when chloride content is 154 milliequivalent, and therefore when large amount is given, it can lead to hyperchloremic non-anion gap metabolic acidosis. Now, patient having high anion gap diabetic ketoacidosis, on top of it has normal anion gap metabolic acidosis, is going to be harmful. And large volume saline, because of hyperchloremia, also carries risk of the acute kidney injury. So on physiological basis, this is not rational. Against that, if you look at the use of balanced fluid like RL, they are preferred because they don't cause metabolic acidosis. Moreover, provides bicarbonate by lactate to bicarbonate conversion, and therefore may reduce the risk of acidosis, and it is found in studies to have faster normalization of pH with shorter ICU and shorter hospital length of stay. Where is the evidence? See, I will not narrate, but from 2022, there are several literature which has, and systemic studies and review literature which has supported that balanced fluid are better and preferred over that of normal saline in diabetic ketoacidosis, and therefore the practice of using IV fluid is changing in diabetic ketoacidosis. After IV fluid, what should be the next step? Answer is that because blood sugar is high, we would like to give insulin. When we want to provide insulin, there are two things which we need to remember. Number one, that for first hour, we would like to give IV fluid as a bolus, and subsequently after 1 hour, we would like to give insulin as per the requirement, as per the guidelines. But remember, the second caution lies here, that if serum potassium is less than 3.3 milliequivalent per liter in patient of diabetic ketoacidosis, even in such patient, avoid insulin therapy to avoid life-threatening hypokalemia. So, after giving IV fluid, rather than providing insulin, start with KCL treatment, and once serum potassium increases greater than 3.3, at that time we should start with insulin along with potassium supplementation. Now, what is next? After IV fluid, insulin, what next? Should we give potassium? Potassium is 3.7, which is normal. Or should we give bicarb? Answer is that the next step is to provide potassium, correction of the hypokalemia. But then all of you will say that, oh, potassium was 3.7, there is no hypokalemia. Why should we consider potassium supplementation? So even patient of diabetics with normal serum potassium need potassium supplementation. Why? Because as soon as therapy is started, there will be shift of potassium from ECF to ICF due to insulin, because of the correction of the metabolic acidosis, because of vomiting and because of the glycosidia. There will be continuous loss of the potassium and there will be dilution. So the potassium which was previously normal is likely to be reduced, and therefore each and every patient needs potassium supplementation. So when to provide potassium? Answer is that even if it is 4, 4.5, 5, or up to 5.2, as long as serum potassium is 5.2 or less, it is important to provide potassium in the same. However, if serum potassium is greater than 5.3, then initially don't provide potassium. But subsequently, after therapy, once potassium reduces, urine output establishes, it is important to provide potassium after measuring potassium level. So providing potassium is something which is very important. So when it is greater than 5.3, avoid 3.3 to 5.3, injection KCl 20 to 30 milliequivalent per liter after diuresis. Less than 3.3, hold insulin, provide potassium, and try to maintain serum potassium between 4 to 5 is the goal in patient of diabetic ketoacidosis. Now, after that comes the correction of the metabolic acidosis. Answer is that we don't correct it. The correction does not require. Avoid routine use of bicarbonate therapy in diabetic ketoacidosis. Only very, very few selected patients with severe acidosis, pH less than 6.9, may require short-term bicarbonate supplementation. And now coming to very important last part of today's discussion, that how do we use fluid for resuscitation? Timely and appropriate fluid administration is critical and life-saving in acutely ill patient. Like all field, there is a changing trend. So the only constant thing in life is change, whatever may be the field. And so is the case in resuscitation fluid. So how fast, how much, and which fluid? Okay, so right time, right dose, and right fluid saves the life. So how much fluid and how fast should we give? Remember, providing IV fluid in resuscitation is like 100-meter race. You need to give it fast and give it only for short period and subsequently discontinue. Dr. Subhash Todi sir has nicely narrated that volume overload itself can be harmful, and therefore fluid is not an innocent bag hanging on the bedside of the patient. Give it judiciously. So how much should be given? Early and adequate. So what is early and adequate? Answer is that as per surviving sepsis guideline, they said that 30 ml per kg in first 3 hours. That means roughly 10 ml per kg per hour. So if patient is weighing say 60 kg, 600 ml in first 3 hours should be the volume should be given. So early and optimum fluid is useful because that delays. Because if we delay and provide inadequate fluid for replacement, there will be prolonged microcirculatory hypoperfusion, and that can lead to organ damage. And therefore, timely, adequate fluid restores circulatory blood volume, improves tissue oxygenation, hypovolemia is corrected, hemodynamic stability is better, and because of that, risk of organ damage will decrease. Now, is the 30 ml per kg a rule? No. If you look at the European guidelines which appeared in March 2025, they said that in general it is 30 ml per kg, but needs personalized adjustment with ongoing reassessment. So it's not, suppose patient has edema or patient has some cardiac problem or patient has impaired renal function. In such case, we have to individualize, but in general, 30 ml per kg is the figure which is given everywhere. And then last question, that which IV fluid should be given? Because we have so many options with us. And therefore, I would like to discuss selection of IV fluid in 4 parts: physiological basis, crystalloid over colloid, saline versus balanced fluid, and balanced fluid which and why. The first, that on physiological basis, why we select one fluid over the other? Answer is that it is the ability of given fluid to expand intravascular compartment will determine why we select fluid over the one over the other. Suppose if we give 5% of dextrose, it's a water. It will get distributed in all the fluid compartment equally. And because of the same, out of 1 liter, only 83 ml will be retained inside the intravascular compartment. Sir, we have given 1 liter of fluid, but blood pressure has not improved. So surgeon may think of internal bleed, physician may think of septicemia, but it may be improper administration of IV fluid. Selection may be 5% dextrose. Against that, why saline and RL is preferred? Because they are sodium containing fluid, sodium is distributed entirely in ECF, and therefore whatever fluid we infuse will stay in ECF, and therefore some 250 to 300 ml will be the expansion with 1 liter of normal saline or RL, and therefore it is effective. Against that, why colloid and blood are most potent? Because they remain entirely in intravascular compartment, and therefore with smaller volume, expansion will be greater. Not only that, the fluid like 20% albumin will shift fluid from other compartment, and the volume of expansion will be greater than volume infused, and therefore colloid and blood are most potent. So RL and saline are preferred. Colloid and blood are most potent or effective, and don't use 5% dextrose or isolytes or hypotonic fluid. Now, if we can use normal saline, can't we use dextrose saline because it will simultaneously provide even calories? And we were talking about providing calories to sick patient who needs more energy. Answer is no. For this is 100-meter race where rapid administration of IV fluid is important, and even in non-diabetic patients, such rapid infusion can lead to hyperglycemia. Hyperglycemia induce glycosuria. Urine output will increase, which is harmful in 2 ways. Number 1, if urine output increases, we say now slow down because output is good. We have adequately replaced the fluid. So that is something which will make us to take wrong decision. And second thing, that in presence of deficit, when urine output induced fluid will be lost, the purpose of administering IV fluid is counterbalanced, and therefore avoid all dextrose containing IV fluid. For initial fluid administration, RL, saline are preferred fluid. Now the question arises that should we give crystalloid or colloid? See, we have 4 players. Out of that, when we talk about crystalloid and colloids, crystalloid is good, but colloid is better because greater, faster and longer volume expansion. So, is the potent colloids are superior and preferable over crystalloids for resuscitation? It's not the only potent effect, but safety, side effect, outcome and evidence. So, when we look at the evidence between albumin and crystalloid, SAFE guideline, Albios guideline, these are the 2 major guidelines. They say that at 28 days and 90 days, there is no difference in mortality. Albumin is 100 times more expensive than crystalloid, and therefore, current guideline cannot endorse the use of albumin in light of its expenses, and there is no proven benefit. So, when to use albumin for resuscitation? Answer is that if you look at the surviving sepsis guidelines, they said that the patient who needs large crystalloid volume, we may to provide albumin as a second-line therapy. So albumin is not first-line volume replacement for resuscitation. It should never be given to correct hypoalbuminemia in normotensive ICU patient. And if you look at the European guideline 2024, there is single one indication of using albumin over crystalloid, and that is in critically ill patient with cirrhosis. I'm not going to talk about its use in plasmapheresis or hepatorenal syndrome because we are talking about resuscitation. But as far as resuscitation is concerned, only such cirrhotic patient, hypoalbuminic critical patient needs albumin. Otherwise, it is second line, used as an adjuvant, as a second line in unresponsive to crystalloid, the one who cannot tolerate large volume of crystalloid. Now, if you albumin to crystalloid, and if you look at the crystalloid versus colloid, there are several trials, guidelines, and including surviving sepsis guidelines, which says that crystalloids are primary fluid of choice for resuscitation, and no indication currently exists for first-line routine use of colloid over crystalloid. So, 2025 conclusion is what? Crystalloid is preferred to colloids in fluid resuscitation. Use colloid in few hemodynamically unstable septic patient who needs large volume. So crystalloid is in, colloid is out. We have only two players to play now, and that is we prefer crystalloid. So saline versus crystalloid, saline versus RL. It's the battle between the best. Both are very good. So we need to study physiological basis and evidence. See, if you look at the physiological characteristic of normal saline, it's an abnormal saline. See, chloride is 154 milliequivalent, no buffer. And therefore, 50% higher chloride carries risk of hyperchloremia, which is dangerous, AKI, metabolic acidosis, and other causes. Against that, physiological composition of RL, electrolytes are matching, provides bicarbonate, and corrects metabolic acidosis, and therefore safer for volume infusion in acidosis, reduces risk of hyperchloremia and AKI, and therefore on basis of the physiological characteristic, balanced fluid like RL is better than that of the saline. But colloid was also physiologically better, but when we look at its evidence was not there. So normal saline versus balanced fluid, if we look at the evidence, it is the fight between two. There are 3 rounds. Normal saline is better, balanced fluid is better, and both are equal. The first, normal saline is better. It's number 1 fluid used worldwide. 200 million liters annually in USA. By default, it is used everywhere. Easy availability, low cost, compatible with blood. These are the advantages. And this is the practice. But this is not evidence. We don't have a single paper suggesting that NS is better than RL. Now, is the balanced fluid better? Do we have any evidence? Solid evidence. Literature, trial, guidelines. See, if you look at the literature, they say that it's abnormal saline, it is harmful. If you look at the trials, so many trials, but the trial which has made a great difference is SMART trial, SOLTD trial, which appeared in NEJM in 2018. And that clearly says that there is lower rate of death, renal replacement therapy, AKI with balanced fluid than normal saline. And if you look at the guidelines, in 2021 surviving sepsis guidelines says that we suggest using balanced fluid instead of normal saline. So current trend favors the use of balanced IV fluid over normal saline. Normal saline, no clinical benefit, no physiological benefit. Cost is okay, but it may be harmful. So if IV saline is harmful, should we ban it? Should the normal saline be end of the story? No. It's not dead yet. Fight is not over. Wisely used normal saline is useful. Can we give RL in all? Not at all. It may be harmful. Avoid in metabolic alkalosis, hypochloremia, profound vomiting, neurosurgical patient, traumatic brain injury. With blood it is not compatible, and therefore indication like vomiting, hypochloremia, metabolic alkalosis, hypovolemic hyponatremia, brain injury hypercalcemia with BT are the indication of normal saline. But the third round is that, do we have any evidence that both are equal? Answer is that yes. Major fault trials, split trial 2015, basic trial 2021, plus trial 2022, and fluid crossover trial June 2025. They say that both the fluids are equal. So, after all this literature, what is your conclusion? Should we prefer balanced fluid or NS? Answer is that, conclusion is that it is confusion. There is no clear-cut guidelines. So, I would like to come out with the conclusion here that balanced fluid are better than normal saline. I have three reasons. Reason one, summary of major trial. If there is a tug of war, on opposite side, there is no force to pull, because there is no trial which says saline is better. So not a single trial suggests superiority of NS over RL. Systemic review and RCT. What is important? Run in one match or average run rate? Obviously, it's average run rate. And therefore, after basics and plus trial, the review literature, I will not narrate, but 2022, there are 3 systemic studies. In 2023, best fluid trial. In March 2024, best living review trial. 2024 November, Solute Indian study trial. January 2025, a systemic review. June 2025, a meta-analysis. All clearly says that balanced fluid is better than that of the normal saline. And recent guidelines, surviving sepsis guidelines says that you can use either in 2016, but in 2021 they said that use balanced fluid. Then other is the Canadian trial, 2024 European Society Intensive Guidelines. Every trial, every recent guideline says that balanced fluid is preferred over that of the normal saline, and therefore final verdict is that balanced fluid is better. But I have 2 problems, 2 group of patient. One is, can we use RL in hyperkalemia? Because normal saline is potassium free, but RL is containing potassium. So, I mean, RL potassium 4 milliequivalent, NS is 4. So, obviously, we avoid RL with potassium, and we select potassium-free normal saline for fluid resuscitation is a wrong concept. See, prefer RL, avoid normal saline. Why to choose RL? Number 1, RL will not increase serum potassium. See, it's just 4 milliequivalent per liter. And hyperkalemia means you need to increase greater than 5.5. If we add 40-degree temperature water in temperature which has 55 degree, will it increase or it will decrease? Obviously, RL will shift potassium towards 4, and therefore RL will not increase serum potassium. Second thing, saline may worsen, RL may correct it. Found to be a bit confusing. But potassium shift from ICF to ECF have a greater effect on serum potassium than potassium concentration of IV fluid. NS in large volume can lead to hyperchloremic acidosis, and acidosis will shift potassium from ICF to ACF and can aggravate hyperkalemia. Against that, RL, by correcting metabolic acidosis, will shift potassium inside the cell and may reduce serum potassium, and therefore RL is safer, superior, and preferable to normal saline. But now second question, that Ringer's lactate in lactic acidosis. RL causes lactic acidosis is a myth. Understand the difference. A lactate in RL is sodium lactate. It's not lactic acid. See, it's like normal saline and hydrochloric acid. In both, if you look at anion, chloride is there. But in normal saline, cation is sodium, and in HCl, cation is that of H ion. So here, it is similar that anion is lactate in both, but when cation is H, it is lactic acid, while in sodium lactate, it is the sodium which is cation, and it's alkaline. So if you look at the pH of lactic acid, it is 2.4 to 3.5, while pH of sodium lactate in RL is 6 to 7.3, which is beneficial. It's a precursor of the bicarbonate, and therefore RL is safe and it can never cause the lactic acidosis. It cannot aggravate lactic acidosis. And then comes the last part of the today's discussion. I have almost 5 minutes with me. Is balanced fluid, which and why? See, when we talk about balanced fluid, RL versus plasma light. Reason to prefer plasma light in selected patient. Remember the word selected patient. I don't say that reason to prefer plasma light over RL in all. See, what is the beauty of plasma light when we use it in selected patient? Number one, it is plasma-like. Look at the composition exactly. Sodium, potassium, chloride, acetate, osmolality. It's like that of the plasma. And therefore, there is no risk of electrolyte imbalance and does not increase the cerebral edema. Second thing, content acetate instead of lactate. How it differs? The lactate conversion occurs chiefly in liver, while acetate gets metabolized across the body in liver as well as non-hepatic tissue. And therefore, acetate is effective buffer even in liver failure, even with severe shock. And because of this reason, it is beneficial. Lacks calcium, can be given with blood, provide magnesium, which is common in critically ill patient, and therefore will provide some magnesium. So, selective indication of the plasma light is in most critical sick patients, severe acidosis, hemorrhagic shock, severe diabetic ketoacidosis, liver dysfunction, kidney transplant, and these are some of the cases which is important. With this, I would like to summarize that what is the conclusion 2025. Number one, crystalloids are preferable to colloids in fluid resuscitation. Hypotension means normal saline? No. Hypotension means balanced fluid by and large. Use RL first, use RL first, use RL first. And normal saline is not the first fluid of choice. Use it selectively. All fluids can be good and bad. We have to individualize the choice depending upon the need of the patient. So history, cause, electrolyte disturbances, and acid-base status. Considering all this, use the fluid. If there is acidosis, balanced fluid is better. If there is hypochloremia, metabolic alkalosis, choose normal saline. So normal saline preferred in vomiting, hypochloremia, metabolic acidosis, hypovolemic hyponatremia, brain injury, stroke, with blood and with ceftriaxone. Plasma light in small, some 10% of the patient, 5% of the patient, where rather than RL, we use plasma light. Very critical, very sick, acidotic, severely hypotensive patient, very bad decay patient, severe jaundice, major liver injury, kidney transplant, and others. With this, I would like to end my talk, but before ending, I would like to say that monitoring patient is very important. The harm fluid overload causes is greater than harm provided because of inadequate fluid administration. So fluid overload is a big problem, and therefore with Rose model, resuscitation, optimization, and then evacuation, that is how we should gradually see to it that we prevent volume overload in given patient. Close monitoring, clinical monitoring of the patient with close monitoring of the blood test, electrolyte, ABG, as per the requirement, and then modifying therapy is very, very important. Provide fluid only if it is indicated. It should not be given just like that judiciously. And then with this, I would like to end and would like to thank all of you for supporting this book, Practical Guidelines on Fluid Therapy. But would love to inform you that there is a recent 2024 edition which has come, and that provides in 12 part, 57 chapters, and it's a most comprehensive book currently available across the globe because it provides information about everything. Not only that, We have recently launched a website in San Diego ASN meeting, and that is fluidtherapy.org. This website provides free access to more than 1/3 content of the book, so including fluid resuscitation, fluid therapy in obstetrics, which is not given anywhere, is given here. And with all this, please visit this website, hemodynamic monitoring. So, I mean, several chapters are free. So kindly use this website. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. A brilliant oration, brilliant lecture. Absolutely highlighted the all that is important for management of fluids in 2025. All the recent trials up till beginning of 2025 were included. Brilliant. I just wanted to add one comment. In the sense, the physiological benefit of albumin is also very minimal, because nowadays with the impaired glycocalyx, the benefit of albumin is only 1:1.2 as compared to crystalloid. So even there is no physiological benefit, and it's 5,000 rupees more expensive than normal saline or crystalloid. So as sir rightly mentioned, I think we should stick to crystalloids for resuscitation. I'll open the floor for any questions. And
Sir, in case of, sir, here, sir, here. This side, sir.
Hello.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. In case of diarrhea with severe dehydration.
Diarrhea with?
Severe dehydration.
Yes.
We actually in adult patient, we 30% correction within half an hour, and in case of child below 1 year, we give 30% of the total calculation within 1 hour. But we not give continuously a ringer lactate. After giving 1 liter, suppose 1 liter, we shift to the normal saline.
Literature says that, see, basically in diarrheal fluid, RL and ORS, combination is something which is most vital and most useful. We don't switch over to normal saline, because normal saline will not correct metabolic acidosis. That's number one. Number two, there is no potassium, and therefore literature does not support use of normal saline. However, I would like to make an exception to this general guidelines. Suppose patient of diarrhea presents to us with serum sodium of just 110. Okay? And if we want to, time being, increase serum sodium a little bit, that's the time you can use normal saline. But otherwise, all literature says that, and physiologically also it is rational that we should provide normal saline, and along with that ORS. That is what is the standard recommendation on physiological basis as per the guidelines and as per the literature says.
Actually, sir, in diarrhea, we not measure serum sodium. We not measure. We have first to correct the dehydration. We not measure the serum sodium and such and such.
Okay, probably he has given the answer
I am
already.
unable to understand the thing.
No.
You have already answered his question already.
In diarrhea patient, we not measure serum sodium.
No, we shouldn't measure serum sodium. I fully agree. And therefore, we should start with Ringer's lactate directly. There is no reason that we should wait or we should provide normal saline. Yes, diarrhea means start Ringer's lactate and provide adequately along with ORS. And once you feel that hemodynamically patient is stable, with ORS you can go ahead. So there is no reason for waiting for electrolytes report, no reason for waiting for anything else. As soon as you feel that, oh, clinically patient needs IV fluid, start with Ringer's lactate. I fully agree with you.
Thank you, sir.
We can take the next question.
There is someone.
Hello. Sir,
Yes, go ahead.
In diabetic ketoacidosis, when should we supplement IV magnesium and IV phosphorus? Or in otherwise also, when should we think of supplementing IV magnesium?
As such, guideline does not suggest routine use of magnesium or phosphorus. However, as far as magnesium is concerned, in all sick patient, hypomagnesemia is common. So, besides giving adequate potassium, if your patient, serum potassium of your patient is not improving, if urine output is good, even irrespective of serum magnesium level, or even without measuring serum magnesium level, you can provide serum magnesium to such patient. But routine in diabetic ketoacidosis, like potassium is needs to be supplemented in every patient, that type of recommendation of magnesium is not there, and hypophosphatemia is much less common, and therefore the reason of providing phosphorus is only in very, very few patients.
Okay.
Regarding the hypokalemia, I would like to let you know that if hypokalemia is not improving, hypomagnesemia is a common cause, number one. Number two, serum magnesium and intracellular magnesium level does not correlate, and therefore in hypokalemic patient, even if serum magnesium is normal, you can provide magnesium provided urine output is good and serum creatinine is normal.
So, due to lack of time, we cannot accept question. Last question this is, and after that we'll conclude.
We can go with the last question. We're running out of time.
Sir, when we think about decompensated cirrhotic liver, how decompensated cirrhotic liver, CLD, cirrhosis, decompensated cirrhosis liver.
Cirrhosis.
Yeah.
In cirrhosis of liver,
Yeah. We are using 20% albumin, and also you are using occasionally 5% albumin. So what is the difference between it? And where should we use 20% in decompensated cirrhosis and also 5% albumin?
so use of albumin cirrhosis, when 5%, when 20%.
Yes.
Now, as such, in a cirrhotic patient, if patient is hemodynamically unstable and severely hypotensive, then
5%.
only we need to provide albumin. Otherwise, for hemodynamically stable patient, to correct low albumin level, there is no recommendation to provide albumin for resuscitation. Second thing, that 20% versus 5% albumin. Answer is that when we want to restrict the fluid, because many of the cirrhotic patients are edematous, they have ascites, and therefore in smaller volume we can expand the intravascular volume in better way, and therefore 20% albumin may be preferred. While 5% albumin we use in many of the other conditions, but in volume overloaded patient where we want to restrict the fluid, 20% will be preferred agent.
Thank you, sir, for your
Thank you
nice
so much.
session.
We'll take questions of dais. We're running out of time. Thanks a lot, Sanjay sir, for a very detailed and a very wonderful presentation. I would request Dr. S.B. Nagori sir to felicitate Dr. Sanjay Pandya for this session. I request Dr. Pinaki Desai to felicitate Dr. Pratik Das. I request Dr. Sampath Jain sir to felicitate Dr. Suresh.